Hello and welcome to Devil's Advocate. My guest today is the ever charming, ever non-interruptive, exceedingly polite, will always allow you to finish your answer, the charming, a very dear friend of mine, Karan Thapar. Karan, welcome to Devil's Advocate.
Thank you for those wonderful lies that you just told about me.
But these lies are true. Now, I've been told, and not that it's specific information privy only to me, that Pakistan always has two high commissioners at the same time in Delhi. One is the guy who floats in and out of Islamabad, and one is you. What is this love affair that you've had with Pakistan? Why is it that every Pakistani high commissioner relies on you for everything that must happen in Delhi?
Well, the first part of that answer is that I am reasonably fond of that country. My parents were born there in the days when it was part of India. I don't share the prejudice that my countrymen in some quarters do, and I certainly don't have any prejudice for Muslims. I'm open, as a journalist ought to be. I enjoy going there, I enjoy understanding them. Many Pakistanis who are in power, including Benazir when she was alive, her husband today, who is still president, are friends of mine. But the Pakistan High Commissioner doesn't depend on me. If he did, I think he'd have a very unsuccessful time here because, as you know, most Indian politicians and quite a few Indian bureaucrats don't get on with me. So that is proof that he doesn't depend on me because he'd fail.
No, but why don't they get along with you? You're such a charmer. Every politician must love you. You allow them to finish interviews. A couple of them walk out. But, you know, basically it's all hunky-dory. You've had excellent relationships with Advani. Advani mentions you in his book. By the way, he also says that you were the one who created the mediation between Ashraf Qazi and him. So in a way, you did, in a manner of speaking, something more honorable than what people are being blamed for today.
Well, let me tell you that story, because it all happened in the roughly 18-month period that led up to Agra. Ashraf Qazi was here. He was keen to get to meet Indian ministers so that he could understand them and try and push the Indo-Pakistan dialogue further. I happened to know George Fernandez, so I introduced Ashraf to George, and they met and they spoke a couple of times. After that, George said, I think you need to take Ashraf to Advani Sahib. And he asked me to do it. He set up the first meeting. Karan was effectively the chauffeur. And for the next 18 months, roughly some 32, 33 times, I would drive Ashraf late at night to Mr. Advani's home, deliver him there. And in those days, Mr. Advani lived in Pandara Park. And I would then go off in the car and park it under a light in Khan Market.
But how different was that from what we are seeing today? Today, some people are being blamed for, you know, helping people come into cabinet. I mean, today, you know, we take names of editors, journalists saying, oh, wow, they influenced the cabinet formation. You, in many ways, influenced cross-border talks. You, in some ways, influenced the relationship between India and Pakistan.
No, I didn't influence cross-border talks. All I did was to arrange for Ashraf Qazi, the Pakistan High Commissioner, to meet George Fernandez. And then when George Fernandez arranged for him to meet Mr. Advani, I acted as chauffeur. So that, and I've written about this, by the way. This is not a new story.
Absolutely.
I wrote about it in Sunday Sentiments just after Mr. Advani mentioned it in his book. Right through and until Mr. Advani mentioned it in his book, it was considered to be something that they wanted kept quiet, and so I did. But the second Mr. Advani wrote about it, I wrote about it in Sunday Sentiments.
No, but aren't the lines blurred?
No.
Aren't the lines getting blurred? Journalists, either chauffeurs, conduits, arrangers, people trying to fix cabinets, ostensibly so. Where do you think journalism rests today? You now run a media program, which I've told you I love. You know, you've got your weekly program, you've got your daily program. Is there a lot of power resting in the journalist's hands? Or does the journalist believe he's become very powerful?
I'll answer your second question, but let me first answer the attempted innuendo about lines being blurred. In my case, there were no lines being blurred whatsoever, because I was acting as not a conduit, not a go-between, certainly not as a carrier of messages. I was taking someone who was a friend who I have known from the days when I met his wife when I was 6 years old, Abida. Her father and my father were ambassadors together in Afghanistan, to meet an Indian minister when they both wanted to meet each other. But because they didn't want to attract attention, because this needed to be done incognito, so to speak, because the relationship between the two countries was such it would be disrupted if it became public, I played the role of a friend. And I see nothing wrong in that. I never wrote about it. I never extracted any advantage from it. And it did help in the end in facilitating the Agra talks, because when the Agra decision was taken, Mr. Advani rang me roughly around 6:30 in the morning to say, would I pass on a message to Ashraf that he and the conversations he'd had with Mr. Advani were critical to the decision the government had taken to invite President Musharraf. In the end, Agra didn't work out. It ended up as a bit of a fiasco. But it was a useful thing for journalists to help promote. Now,
but should the government have used your services? Should they have taken advantage of your friendship? No. Should they have taken advantage of your excellent contacts with Mr. 10% today and his late wife? Should the government have done that?
Hang on a second, you're blurring things. The advantage was taken by Ashraf, a friend, who asked if I would do it. Mr. 10% is a reference to someone completely different. Now you're blurring the lines, okay? Mr. 10% is the way the press refers to Asif Zardari, who is not Ashraf Qazi.
But now that you're talking...
Just to clarify, now having sown the seeds of innuendo, created a measure of doubt in the minds of the audience, suggested that I'm like some of my colleagues who are more famous in the news at the moment. You're now asking a different question.
That I know that you won't be that kind. That I'm pretty aware of.
That kind or that unkind?
No, that kind.
No, of that type. Of that type. Okay.
But
so you're making a very helpful distinction between them and my colleagues who become famous.
That's if there is evidence. We'll park that for a minute. My simple question is, in today's world, do journalists, people like you, television anchors, actually think they're running the country? Because from everything that one sees around us, there is a feeling, and it's not just about Karan Thapar, it's about television anchors who every day set a national agenda, who are almost as if driving the national agenda, as it were.
I think you're exaggerating the role of television anchors and journalists. I don't think journalists set the television agenda. They don't set the national agenda by any means. What they do is to raise questions. Those questions are meaningful and effective if A, they're topical, B, they're relevant, and C, they achieve something.
And D, if they're honorable.
Well, if the people are honorable and the questions are honorable, but the honor of a question takes a lot more time to discover. At first hearing, you don't know whether it's honorable, but what you do know is that it's topical, that it's relevant, and that it is taking the discussion further in terms of more interesting areas and enlightening the audience. If it does all three, it serves a perfect journalistic purpose, but that is not setting the national agenda.
But that is
actually, can I just finish? Yeah. That is actually...
I love that. Can I just finish? You see what we go through when we're with you?
But do you see what happens also? Do you see why people think I interrupt? Just as when you put your finger up, I assumed you were interrupting. People do the same thing in my case. It's not that I'm interrupting. You weren't interrupting me, but your enthusiasm to come in was suggesting an interruption, just as my enthusiasm suggests to others. So when people say Karan's always interrupting, he's not. It's the nature of an interview that makes the other party think he's
Okay, but
stopped.
Answer my question.
Which is this, that journalists set the television agenda, they set a news agenda, but the national agenda is actually set by governments when they function well. When they fail to function well, the opposition sets it for them. Journalists don't matter beyond the fact that they raise critical questions, bring into focus critical issues, sometimes expose mistakes, improprieties, even illegalities. But beyond that, journalists don't do much more.
They don't take sides? There's no hidden agenda? There's no plant?
No. I don't know about hidden agendas, but there are two types of things journalists can do. When you play devil's advocate, you play it best when you take a side. There's no use not taking the side opposite to yours, because then what's the point of it? On the other hand, when you're doing a discussion, what you're trying to do is to bring different views to the surface, and so you're asking questions objectively from position of curiosity and from the position of exploring that person's viewpoint, and then you switch to a different set of questions for the other person. There, it's objectivity that's important.
No, but
in devil's advocate, perhaps you take sides to explore the other person's thinking.
No, but the question is, why would you interview someone when you already have a preconceived notion? I mean, why would you interview someone when you already disagreed, or you have to take a contrarian view?
You're making a fundamental mistake. When you take the contrarian view, it doesn't mean that you're actually adherent of that view, that is your own thinking.
But it's just
a trick. You take the contrarian view because that's a way of bringing to the surface the opposite viewpoint to the person's, and so you believe that's the best way of questioning.
So it's a trick. It's a
way to get... It's a strategy.
Yeah, but it's not a tactic. It's not necessarily a strategy.
But it's not necessarily Karan's view. When Karan interviews Mr. Advani, he'll be asking questions from a Congress standpoint. When Karan interviews Dr. Manmohan Singh, he'll be asking questions from Advani's standpoint. That doesn't mean that Karan has morphed into...
But they always say Karan is very, very soft on Advani. We'll come back to that immediately after this short break, in which you can ruminate about the devil and his many advocates. See you in a bit. Welcome back to Devil's Advocate. I have the devil across me, and we'll get back to where we left off from, Advani ji. What is this proximity that you've always had to Advani? I mean, you were almost part of the family at one stage.
Well, I'm not sure about part of the family. I think that's an exaggeration which you intend to be flattering, but once again is one of your delightful innuendos where you're suggesting to the audience that he's so close to Advani, there's something suspicious about the relationship.
Not
but
suspicious.
Leave the innuendo aside. The truth is that there was a time when perhaps Mr. Advani had given me more interviews than perhaps he'd given anyone else.
Why?
Because I think he found that these were challenging, useful, and objectively in honesty.
And you were always polite.
No, I wasn't actually. That's the truth, because the reason we haven't had interviews from Mr. Advani for the last 3 years is because, and this you can confirm by talking to the gentleman who runs my channel, Rajdeep Sardesai, that the second last interview was one that Mr. Advani didn't like. He didn't want it to go on air. He wanted it changed. I said that I saw no reason why to change it. I'd done an honest, objective interview.
But tell me, why do all your guests come to you with such delight?
But can I finish the Advani question first? Okay. That interview with Mr. Advani, he didn't like. He wanted it changed. I said I saw no reason to change it. Rajdeep stood by me, and he was very honorable in doing so. The interview went on air as recorded. Mr. Advani was extremely upset. He didn't give another interview. After a lapse of 2 years, he agreed to do one. 10 minutes into the recording, and this was the first interview that he was giving before the 2009 elections, he objected. He thought that the tone wasn't right, and he got up at the commercial break and left. And that interview didn't happen either.
Why do so many people
I'm simply mentioning this is because, well, the answer to that
Narendra
is
Modi got up, Ram Jethmalani got up.
And Ram Jethmalani's getting up got me an Asian Television Award. So I must admit.
So do you actually do this on purpose? I have a feeling you drive people insane. You drive them insane enough so that they get up and leave. They say, Karan is a rude son of a gun. And then the next day, Karan sends them in typical British style, a lovely, charming letter with a bouquet. Do you still send a bouquet of roses?
I don't send a bouquet of roses. I never did. But I always send a letter to thank them. I think that's polite to do. But you know, your question, why do people get up and leave? I don't make them get up and leave, and very few have. And the truth is, even those who did get up and leave have returned, with the exception of Narendra Modi. And in Narendra Modi's case, he rang me up the next day to say that he would give interviews again, and he said, I love you very much. I'm not sure what he meant by that, but he did say.
Neither do I know what he meant by that. Other than the fact that you love Advani and Narendra Modi, give me one politician in India you love and one you detest.
Are you using the word love in the ironic sense when you say love Narendra
yes,
Modi?
Yes, in the platonic sense. Not in the contextual sense as it abounds today. But seriously, one politician you hate and one politician you love in India. And don't be diplomatic.
No, I'm not being diplomatic, but there isn't a single politician I hate. I think they're all challenges. I think some are more challenging than others.
Karan.
And I admire politicians, believe it or not. I admire politicians.
There's not one person within Parliament or outside you hate. Are you trying to tell me you love every politician?
I don't know them well enough to hate them.
Ah, nice.
I mean, you have to know someone to hate them.
Which is one politician you love, other than Advani?
I don't, once again, when you say other than Advani, you know, you're so good at the innuendo, in the charming way with your beautiful pearly white teeth, smiling, flashing, right? Sometimes I say that even a barracuda would probably kiss as nicely as you, right?
Okay, come back to the question.
I don't know politicians well enough to love them either. Look, the emotions of love and hate depend upon a certain knowledge of the person, unless you're simply talking about superficial likes and dislikes, which are meaningless.
In today's India, if you were to attribute hatred and destruction to one politician, or you would imagine that one politician has really stymied the progress of India, who would that be?
I don't think I have an answer to that. I don't attribute hateness and violence to one politician.
It is so interesting to have a Karan Thapar without an answer and at a loss for words.
How about saying Karan Thapar, who refuses to answer? Who senses the trap
but refuses to walk out, refuses to get up, because he's so beautifully mic'd.
Because he's enjoying the process. I love being questioned. This is the first time anyone's expressed an interest in me.
Let's come to some of your pet likes and dislikes, since to the general public you seem to hate everyone who comes to get interviewed.
No,
Who's the editor?
I'm
just generally saying, that's the perception. Who's the editor you most like?
Editor of a newspaper, editor of a television
editor,
channel?
Newspaper, editor of a channel. Other than Rajdeep.
The editors that I get
Who's
on
the editor
with,
you most admire in India?
I suspect the answer would be a combination of people, and I'm not fudging.
Okay, give me a combination.
MJ, particularly in the days when he launched The Telegraph, and in the days when he launched Sunday. Arun Puri, when he made India Today the most happening magazine, although that was 20 years ago.
Tell me, in 10 at the end of this year, who would be the one?
Well, 2 or 3. Vinod Mehta for his incredible courage. Bharat Bhushan for making a tabloid format an extremely readable and sometimes authoritative paper.
One name.
Well, I can't, because I think there isn't an easy answer.
Okay, give me one name on television
that I most admire.
Yeah. Other than Rajdeep, because there's vested interest there.
Barkha, because I think she conducts We the People with great aplomb and skill. She has a tremendous capacity to be sympathetic and yet objective, and that capacity is a personality trait which I admire.
One editor you dislike?
Veer Sanghvi, because I think he does wonderful feature interviews. I think the interview he did with Sindhya.
Have you made up with
just
both
before he died? I don't think I've had a quarrel with them.
Okay, very quickly, one editor you dislike?
I don't dislike any. I see
one
no reason why
editor you think is not true to his calling. Now, come on, you can't be diplomatic. You can't be diplomatic.
I'm not being diplomatic, but I haven't thought about editors that deeply. Okay, you're asking me questions that are out of my ken.
One interview that you've deeply regretted?
Oh, several.
No, give me one and the reasons. I mean, the person you interviewed, who you hated. When you walked out of the room, you felt like throwing acid on him or her. Didn't Jayalalitha lock you up for the night?
No, she didn't. She asked us to wait for an hour and a half because she tried very hard to persuade us not to broadcast the interview we'd recorded. We decided that there was no reason not to.
How was that feeling, though?
No, she was a lady who misunderstood me, and I suspect I misunderstood her, so I think there was a misunderstanding on both sides. By the way, I met up with her 3 years later at a National Integration Council meeting. We were both members, and I went up and I said, forgive me, I don't think I'm the person you want to meet at this moment, but could I still say hello? And she turned around and she said, what on earth makes you say that, Karanji? How lovely to meet you. And she was so charming.
Is this a strategy? Be rude, be nasty, let time heal, and then they'll love you till eternity.
No, I don't think it's nasty.
It seems to be repeated pattern.
Can I put it like this? I don't think I'm nasty. People may think I am, and that's a different matter, but I don't think I'm nasty.
I know you're not nasty as a human being.
What I am is persistent, and let me explain why I'm persistent, because I do believe that if a question is worth asking, it's worth persisting with till you get a sensible answer.
So as we end, very quickly, very, very quickly, in your style, the one thing that you detest about being Karan Thapar?
That sometimes I talk too much.
Sometimes? The one thing that you love about being Karan Thapar?
That I get to meet interesting people and to ask them questions, and 99% of them realize that it's a job I'm doing and are not offended by tough questioning.
If you were to be reborn, would you be reborn as Karan Thapar?
I wouldn't know what else to be reborn as.
The devils have a very, very long life cycle. They always get reborn. Karan, what a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Suhel. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for being with us. We hope you enjoyed this reverse dialogue. And as you can see, Karan never lets go, even when he's being interviewed. Thank you for being with us. Good night.
Beautifully done. Very, very nicely done. I think my job's at risk.